All right, guys, what we're going to take a look at today is a couple different things here. First off, we're going to take a look at getting your icons submitted. You can send them to me via email. Obviously, everything should be submitted just via email so I can grade it all. But also, I want to make sure that you guys are posting this stuff onto the message board just so you can share them with each other and just get an idea of what they look like. I'm not necessarily asking like we do like a full-blown critique of these things, but I just wanted to kind of have them as a share spot for you. So if you do see something you like or you feel like you might be able to use, you can leave a message for the person that you have, but we'll walk through that in just a minute. And then obviously we'll take a look at working on the infographic, introducing it, what it looks like, some inspiration stuff, some different ways of thinking about it, and just kind of some different ways to kind of make it a little more cohesive. The example I have up on the screen is something that was done 2 semesters ago. So this is definitely like some different things to look at in terms of like styling or, you know, just different ways to like use that information. But again, when you're thinking about, we want to think about visualizing data, visualizing all that kind of info. And Illustrator is a perfect tool for that because we can really kind of look at different ways of like scaling, sizing, different types of graphs to achieve all that. So first thing I want to take a look at is, let me change my share screen, and jumping into Blackboard and kind of taking a look at those resources there for you. So let me change that to that. There we go. All right, so what we're going to take a look at is underneath the projects tab, that's where you're going to find the infographic. I posted this up I think like a week or so ago. So it was just there if anybody wanted to take a look at it. I didn't want to rush you through the infographic or through the icons. The other thing I wanted to take a look at, let me change my view so that yours looks like mine. The other thing is that as far as kind of timeline goes for the class, we have this week and then next week, obviously we're not meeting because of Thanksgiving break. So that will give you basically 2 full weeks to work on this, obviously minus like holiday stuff, but it's probably gonna be pretty low key this year for a lot of people. But then when we get back from break, I'm gonna introduce the final project right away. And then I'm gonna treat those final 2 weeks of the semester as just essentially like work as open lab time, where I'll just be hanging out in the collaborate room, just answering questions, basically just like extended office hours kinds of things for feedback and help if you need it. So as I'm going through any of this stuff, again, if you have any questions on anything, please let me know. So what I'm going to do is take a look at the infographic. First thing I'm going to do is look at project requirements. I have some tips and some how-to stuff, and I have a couple different examples on here that I think work really well. So first thing I'm going to do is pop open this. So what you're going to do is you're creating this infographic, and the big idea is that you're going to visually display data, and this should be related to the video game industry. So there's a library of icons that are created by you, your classmates, that'll be all up on Blackboard, any other shapes, imported images, graphics, custom fonts, that kind of thing. So when you're thinking about this, this is really kind of taking all those different pieces that we've done over the course of the semester, playing with color and texture and typography and different illustration styles, that type of thing, to really kind of tie all those different pieces together into one big kind of final project. Now, again, because this is all tied into the video game industry, there's tons and tons of different like data points that you can look for with this. So subjects have kind of ranged. I've seen students do this on like specific games where they have talked about like the history of the Mario series or one specific game, like if they were going to do it on like, I don't know, there's like tons of data on Auto, oddly. So I don't know if you're familiar with the game. It's like ultra violent and awful, and I don't let my kids play it, but there's tons of data available online. So I don't know like why that exists, but they must have like a pretty rabid fan base. Now, what your project's going to include is that clear explanation or that title. So when you're thinking about that, like you almost think about this as like if you're writing a paper, how you have like a thesis statement and that's what you lead with. Think about things in terms of size. Hierarchy is important. The biggest, most important thing, it should be the biggest thing on the page. You're gonna need a layout that has some sort of balance and it's proportional to data. So if you're talking about something that's a minor data point, don't eat half your page talking about it. So you want to kind of think about that balance. You'll need at least 3 sections of data, so different parts of your topic. Like I don't want to just see one long graphic about one specific data point. If you're going to talk about like the Mario series, then maybe you talk about like lifetime units sold, approximate number of levels made on the Mario Maker game, you know, like that kind of stuff. So you're going to want to break that all up into separate areas, but you still want to have like an overall cohesive feel to it. I would recommend using a grid structure to organize your data so that you can kind of see like, you know, if you're going to have to have 3 sections of data that you have, you know, 15% of it is dedicated to like a big flashy header, and then you've got another, you know, 25%, that's all 25% each of different data points about it. And then that final maybe 10% is just minor stuff, or is going to be kind of like you citing your sources, that type of thing. So if you are pulling in your data from like specific websites, you can always cite that at the very bottom. Now, again, we talked about like different topics, but specific games, timelines, educational trends, specific consoles. Like I know the PlayStation 5 is coming out, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like data about that and sales and projected sales and all that. Comparing one thing to another, whether it's one game to another, one system to another, one genre to another. Financial impact is interesting. Like you can see like mobile, I've seen this done like mobile versus console, or like in-app purchases. There's a lot of data available about that. That's kind of interesting. And then also too, like the rise of mobile gaming, like the App Store, and how much damage they do every year in sales. So there's a lot of different things you can kind of think about in those terms. Now, as far as your file setup goes, you're going to set this up at 650 pixels wide, 1600 pixels tall. Now, if you need to go bigger or smaller, remember you can grab your artboard tool and add or subtract area from it. I just recommend this as a starting point, but again, you can kind of modify that as you need to. You're going to need a clear title, explanation, and consistent use of those downloaded fonts. Remember that when you turn this thing in, you're going to give me a JPEG of this, but if you give me an Illustrator file too, make sure your fonts are saved as outlines, but double check your spelling before you do that. Again, with that, you'll need to think about like how your layout is built. So it's properly balanced, it's proportional, that there's a use of grid to kind of create that even balance. So again, as you're looking at it, like dragging in those guidelines, working with that, I mean, it's kind of up to you guys how you want to build that, but it's, you know, it's really in the end, I just want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're looking at like data that's easily kind of visualizable and isn't overpowering in one spot or another. You almost want to create a flow with this. Remember that because you've got a really tall graphic, this is something scrollable. So you want to think about this as something that you'd be like thumbing through on your phone or scrolling down and not seeing the entire graphic at once. So you want to kind of keep that flow to it. This isn't like a poster where you see the whole thing all at once. Your document should contain references to where your data came from. So that's going to be your citing your sources, and you can do that at the very bottom. And just that's something that's real subtle and real simple. And I have that in the examples. And that this thing should work in the context of an information piece. So there's a clear purpose, and it's easy to understand what that data is. So is that making sense as far as kind of what the requirements are? And I have my window open on the side too if you got any questions in the chat. All right, so that's the basics of what the ask is. What I want to take a look at are some examples. So let me jump into back into the project page. There's a couple different things I got in here. Like there's these infographic tips. There's also kind of like a how-to. Go. So first off, thinking about like who your target audience is, and again, like for, you know, depending on who it is, like because this is video games. Thanks, Robin. You want to think about like this could be really data for anybody, but it might be more specifically geared towards gamers. So if it's information pertaining to a subject they're interested in, it should have a visual presence like that. So if you're doing something about Mario, there's tons of Mario related fonts. There's tons of Mario related imagery. Think about like the icons and all like the imagery from the game. You want to kind of appeal to them. So it wouldn't make any sense for me to do like a very boring Mario graphic that didn't include like those fonts and those characters. So you want to kind of keep within a theme. That's going to help kind of work towards that target audience. Second thing is keeping it a little more simple. So when there's tons and tons of data and it's real like complex, you tend to lose people. So I think like on this, and this, they're saying like this would work better as 4 or 5 different infographics. Like I was hoping I would blow that up, but apparently it's not. So taking a look at this, I mean, there's so much different stuff that's going on here. The one thing I really like that they did is this hierarchy thing. So here they're showing like sales by business, and they're kind of doing small to large. This really helps you visualize like how much more McDonald's was doing over Burger King. So I think that that's one thing that you can definitely use as a takeaway from that. But again, simplicity tends to be better. Like if it's really like on the example I showed and some of the other ones that you'll see in a minute, things that when you look at it, it instantly clicks in your head what that information is. Those are the ones that tend to work the best. Keeping it focused, keeping on a single topic is really helpful. So again, like simplicity works here. So like what are Mac users most afraid of? Okay, like a hard drive crash. Now like the way they're visualizing that 75% or 40%, those are the kinds of things that you want to look at. So again, like, yes, this works really well, but I don't know, I feel like there is kind of a lot of reading on here. And what I'm thinking about is I want to consider how I can get this data across without having to read a lot of words. I want to just be able to look at things, get a big general statement, a shorter one, and then have kind of that follow through. I don't necessarily want to see stuff like this. Now, the other thing that you want to see is kind of showing things visually. So like you need lots of visuals. This is tons and tons of information. I actually think this is a bad example of it because you're not really showing anything in terms of percentages or graphs or information. It's just got like, yes, it's got a catchy headline. Yes, it's got a great looking graphic, a cool texture, but it's not really doing a whole lot with like actual data. It's just kind of like making you lean in and do a ton of reading. Now, because you guys are gonna have more like, this is a lot more of like an explanation, whereas what you guys are gonna be having is probably gonna be a lot more with like facts and figures. Promotion, don't worry about this one because that's not really something we're going to do other than put it on the message board when we're done. And then the other thing, that whole idea of sizing and scaling, I've given you this. So when you're looking at this, build and view at 100%. And we'll take a look at this thing, but once you post this out on a message board, you're actually going to see that like it may require some scrolling, or if you view it at 100%. So you just want to keep that idea flowing. You want to keep things moving along as you build your graphic. Now, one thing that does become an issue, like this one is 25,000 pixels long. This thing is scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it's really big, but I think that their problem isn't that it's super long, it's just that it ends up being a lot of data that everything's really big. So I think it's just a proportional issue. They have recommended spaces, but I think that like what I'm gonna give you guys as a starting point is fine, and then we can kind of add more to it. This is like obviously ridiculous, like add white space. Yeah, like give some breathing room for your information. This one gives you none. Like I wouldn't even call this an infographic. I think this is just really more of like illustrating like how much of an issue they have at hand there. But again, like that's, you know, giving yourself breathing room, I think is the big takeaway here. Headlines are great. And just like I stated before, like this is adhering to that. Like we've got a big, bold subject. We see exactly what the infographic is. We got some interesting illustrations. We have good white space. We don't necessarily have like a ton in terms of like data points, but as far as flow goes, it's cohesive. The way we've got these borders and these repeated colors and this kind of overall flow from top to bottom, I think that works really well. And again, just like I keep saying, like the flow, that's really like that it makes sense as you're going from top to bottom. Like, so this one, it's got like this very comic book style and it kind of keeps you going, but it also helps tier because like we're seeing like a numbered sequence to it. So as you're going, it's kind of leading you down. It's almost like kind of like a scrolling page turn. Making sure your facts and figures that they're actually right and believable. And again, you're going to cite with the websites that you get your information from, and there we go. Cite your sources. So again, at the very bottom, you'll just have like a little reference with just like little web links to anywhere you pull data from. This one's probably a little bit long. For the most part, I've seen people use anywhere between like 1 and 4 sources for this. So, but it's just some little things to think about, but I definitely want to kind of walk you through that. The second thing that I wanted to pull here is this how-to. Oh man, I'm gonna have to relink this one. It was basically just kind of like a shorter walkthrough, and I'll grab that. This sits on a different server now, so I'll grab that from another link for you. What I want to take a look at though are some examples. So like here we're talking about like statistics, and we're talking about this idea of scrolling. So again, like we could probably use a little bit of white space, but think about like as I'm going through this, I'm doing scrolling. It's got like a nice length to it. I've got a big bold headline, and I'm just kind of starting to see graphics that explain things. So like gamer age, male female splits, split by console, how much time they spend playing, what system are they playing on, like all that. So as you're taking a look, like I think this one did a nice job. It's maybe a little bit like simple as far as the background goes. I think maybe like some textures, just something that like gave it like a little bit more flow would help here. Maybe a little more white space would work. But you're seeing this is really great in terms of like visualizing all this stuff. How does this actually look? And then total sales, what it sold in Japan, what it sold in America, you know, so there's like some pretty clever breakdowns. So you're getting data within the data if you kind of want to dig into it a little bit. So that one I think works really well. this financial impact I thought was really well done too. Just taking a look, like this one isn't as long, but you're really seeing like visualization, pie charts, these kind of like these little graphs here, just really like a great way of showing how this is kind of coming across, like job growth, that type of thing. So some really interesting kind of like ways of visualizing this. And again, like keep thinking about your color palette, like the same shade, this kind of like pinkish orange, the yellows, the blues, like how it's just kind of being repeated throughout. So again, I want to kind of pay attention to those things as I'm doing this. This one I really liked because it's got just a very like consistent style. So here you're seeing a lot of like imagery stuff, you know, like very Mario and like Nintendo inspired, but there's real clear areas of like benefits, concerns. Great way of showing 90%. This is very text heavy, but using like these to show 70, 60%, that type of thing. So again, like great ways of kind of organizing this all visually and dropping in a lot of these different elements. A lot of the stuff on here was either image traced or there were some actual assets that were dropped in. So like the controller was custom built. I believe the little characters were just images that were brought in from Google Images, just with transparent backgrounds and sized up. And then some of the background elements were all built. So that one I think is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. And then here's just a different one. This one I include, and I think there's definitely like something missing on this one, like a big clear headline, which is something we kind of talked about. But the student that did this, I can't remember, what is this game? Oh, well, he or she did their title, but I don't know. I thought it would have been better up top. But so whatever this game is, she posted this to their like on Reddit. She posted it to the subreddit for the game, and this thing got like 60,000 I don't know, upvotes or whatever. And then it got to the point like she just had tons of comments on it and actually started just building infographics for this game just because she liked it so much. And she, you know, so she like kind of became like a little bit internet famous for building these things. But again, I think the reason why this hit so well and was so interesting too, because she knew her demographic, visually it made sense. It broke up the information kind of in a very interesting way. She had cool little captions about like, you know, sight range and the little glasses on the guy and just kind of some data about by character, like speed running. So it was information that was very interesting to them. One thing we did talk about too was just like how she kind of sized some of these up to show like based on like harder enemies to take down, that type of thing, by like scaling these things up or down. So again, it's all about finding the data that you're interested in and then visualizing it. So that's what we got for the infographic. What I recommend doing is you guys probably have your topic in mind, start finding out some information about it, get your document set up, and then just start dragging in elements. Give yourself a topic, give yourself a title, start kind of figuring out like subdividing and kind of giving yourself a little layout area, and then just start dropping stuff in and playing around with it. I think that like when you first look at this as a project, it might seem like a little overwhelming, but I think once you actually just dig in and start dropping information and data points in, it becomes real, kind of a lot more interesting, a lot more exciting to work on because you've got so much that you can kind of work from and play around with. So again, next week we're not going to have class, but if you want to jump in at any point, like whether you're going to email me or if you want to drop in during office hours at any point, or if you're just going to hang out at work today, I'll just obviously be hanging out in the collaborate room. Take advantage of me if you have questions on anything, especially because we don't have a whole ton of time left. Like after this, we only have 3 more class meetings, and it's really just going to be introducing projects and answering questions and just kind of hanging out. So that is it for the infographic. You guys should have your custom icons done and sent into me. If you don't, that's no big deal. You can get that turned in yet today. And then the last thing I'd ask that you guys do is if you come over here and click on critique, here it says this custom icon set. This is where I want you to post your finished icons as a JPEG. So if you use this little embed button, that'll allow you to embed the image so that when I click on your post, I can see it. And then use this little paperclip icon to attach an Illustrator version as well. So I'm going to jump in here and like here's where you can, like I have a thread and you can either reply to this or if you want to go back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new thread. So I'll create a thread for myself. Here's my icons. And then I'm going to attach my Illustrator file. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the link. Apologies, let me grab my. do down here where the attachments are, I'll attach this. So I'm just going to grab. So that's how you'll attach this. And then to embed your image, once you have this in here, let's say pull the embed tool. Oh, that's really frustrating. They got rid of that. Yeah, they must have. Yeah, I really don't like it. It also, I've noticed, like when you're scrolling, yeah, because that's all the table stuff. That's all the spelling. Yeah, I think we're going to have to just add them as attachments. You just have to click them and view them that way. That's really frustrating. Yeah, because it's all the editing stuff. Bummer. All right, so you'll just have to do an attachment and include them that way, and then hit submit, and it'll drop it right on here as a new post. So you'll be able to go through and kind of take a look. So if you guys want to drop those in there, that's how we're gonna have to do it. Man, that's a real bummer. If I find anything about that, I'm gonna see if there's like a way we can. I don't know if there's like different settings I can change for like post rules within Blackboard. I'll dig in that and see. If I find anything, I'll shoot you guys an email about it. So that's pretty much what I got for you guys for this week. It's really just about introducing that infographic and then showing you where you can post your custom icons. So I'm gonna be hanging out in the Blackboard room, and if you guys have any questions, you can just hang out, ask them, and I'm gonna kill the recording in a second. Just take this time to answer questions.